Meanwhile, on the K-Federation starship, who has broken into the armory again and replicated a bunch of handheld vacuums? All of K starts arguing over whether disruptors or phasers are superior, with internal disagreements on amplitude, wavelength, phase setting, etc., until they realized that the Federation already had the designs for the literal perfect infantry weapon and just couldn't be bothered to actually build it. I don't care how many times a week you force me to see that counselor, I'm not getting into the fucking suicide pod. Sir, it's called a transporter. It's called a go fuck yourself, Chief. Even if we ignore the philosophical implications of being destroyed and cloned in another place, this shit malfunctions like every other month. Chief, our first officer and tactical officer are now one person. And they didn't even let this merged officer be the first officer. They demoted half of our first tactical officer. The starship is a clown ship, and Starfleet is the circus. Is that a fucking Narendra? Based. Romulans aren't people. You can kill them without feeling anything. It's okay. Holodeck computer, load program, maximum boobage, version 7.8. Disable safeties. Run program. Why is there a "you may live to see man-made degeneracy beyond your comprehension" written above the holodeck entrance? That's not how the original quote goes. I can't override the system. It's crashing. Sir, he's still asking the holodeck to make them larger. Oh no. I just want Zora to experiment on my body chemistry. When you redeem code on a ship, we have high hopes. Viewing images from computer database. Klingon female. Hot Klingon female. Hot Klingon female naked. Hot Klingon female naked big breasts. Hot Klingon female naked small breasts. Hot Klingon female naked phaser. Disruptor. Why do Klingons like disruptors? Disruptor versus phaser. Why doesn't Starfleet use ship-scale disruptors? Hot Klingon female disruptor. Hot Denobulan female naked. How to erase memory. How to erase memories safely. Hot Trill female naked. Is it a threesome if they have a symbiote? Is porn illegal in Starfleet? How to clear computer search memory. Starfleet security response time. Can replicators make explosives? Me Little Armalite full song. Well, at least someone didn't review 2 Klingons 1 Targ. Captain, once again I have submitted the request for allowing the access to replicating historical items. This time I have attached the projections of Borg border casualties as a result of me filling the bulkheads and engineering with claymores and adding M67 fragmentation grenades to the standard armament of our tactical squads. Fuck the Borg, use it on the Romulans. At least then you can use it multiple times. Borg shields only adapt to energy weapons. Physical force always rips them apart, which is why those 2 security ensigns on the 3rd shift rotation are always arguing about katanas versus claymores for fighting them. I think I saw one of them carrying a katana too. Wouldn't be the weirdest shit on this ship, not by a light year. Physical force always rips them apart. Fucking clanners. Starfleet Command. Stardate 24979. Federation Starship John Moses Browning sent a distress call at 2143. Shipboard 1343 Zulu time indicating that they were being boarded by the Borg. The Starship John Moses Browning is a museum ship specializing in the catalog of the life and inventions of John Moses Browning. The USS JMB, shortened for brevity, was written off as a total loss. As a museum ship, its only defensive armaments were its navigational deflector shields and single phaser emitter, totally incapable of holding off a Borg ship. However, 15 minutes later at 2158 local 1358 Zulu, the USS JMB reported that it had repelled the Borg and inflicted grievous casualties on the Borg. Starfleet Command was absolutely shocked by this transmission, and wary of a Borg ambush dispatched multiple starships omitted due to brevity to investigate. It turns out that the small contingent of security personnel tried to repel the Borg with standard issue phasers, only to be completely overwhelmed once the Borg adapted. The remaining crew, falling back to the exhibits, awaited their grim fate. Then crewman redacted broke into an exhibit containing a Browning automatic rifle model 1917, and using emergency replicator access created 12 M1917 magazines loaded with caliber 30-06 projectiles. Then Redacted single-handedly dispatched 73 Borg drones and the Borg ship, sensing that the resource expenditure outweighed the assimilation attempts, and withdrew, removing the bodies of the drones and all assimilated crew members. Never before has a Borg ship been sent to flight, and further debriefing was requested by Redacted. Get the fuck off my ship. Having transporter technology, still being vulnerable to torpedoes. Not being able to transport a chunk of metal into the front of a torpedo at will. Not being able, for that matter, to just disrupt an incoming torpedo at will. Explain yourself, Trekoids. For the last time, don't try transporting poo out of your bowels out into space. I don't care what state the toilets are in. I had to send 2 people to the infirmary in critical condition because they thought they could reliably localize a transport field entirely in their large intestine without clipping a good chunk of it and God knows what else. Wait, hold up. Yeah, understood. Thank you, doctor. Correction, 1 in critical condition and 1 dead. I'm still amazed that nobody in the setting thought to use transporters as a weapon. Even if instantly removing large parts of your enemy's brains, lungs, hearts, etc. is a little too grisly for Starfleet sensibilities, then just transport them out into the hard vacuum. It's basically everything that exists outside of the ship's hull, and besides, fuck those guys. They got what they were asking for. If that's still too unpleasant for Starfleet regulations, then just transport them into a holding cell, and remove their weapons in transport. Something that's apparently a trivial problem for them. Shit, strip them naked when you put them down in the brig just as a laugh. Just look at it. Expensive, complex, huge logistical requirements. Requires a secure base. Requires ground forces to guard them. Requires an army of highly trained specialists to keep them in the air. Low availability rate. Doesn't like adverse weather, dust, sand. Can't be deployed in terrain deemed too dangerous. Can't survive in contested airspace. Barefoot savages with Soviet-era AA guns can bring them down. Doesn't do anything swarms of cheap drones can't do for 10% of the cost. So what's the point of these things now? Yeah, I know. It is possible to imagine a scenario where they are useful, such as Saddam Hussein obligingly lining up his tanks in a flat, empty desert to be used as target practice, but that dream scenario will not happen again. What is their use case now? Because we're afraid if we don't waste our money on tons of bullshit, we'll be surpassed by our enemies or some gay shit. Who said they were still a viable platform? They're going the way tanks went with the Marines. Complains about bad weather. Shills drones. Pick one, faggot. Well, the US has canceled anything resembling a new attack helicopter program. Old Apaches and Blackhawks might get ITEP and a couple other upgrades, but it looks like that's about it. Seems like the role is going to be taken over by transport helicopters and tilt rotors launching drones out the back or side from standoff ranges, as far as I'm able to tell, at least. Expensive. What aircraft isn't? Complex. What aircraft isn't? Huge logistical requirements. What aircraft doesn't have huge logistical requirements? Requires a secure base. This is also not exclusive to the Apache. Requires ground forces to guard them, as does literally anything worth guarding. Requires an army of highly trained specialists to keep them in the air, as does every military aircraft. Low availability rate, maybe for the third world. Doesn't like adverse weather, dust, sand. Not an issue. Can't be deployed in terrain deemed too dangerous. Not an issue. Can't survive in contested airspace. It's an attack helicopter, no shit. Have escorts gain aerial superiority or accept the risk. Barefoot savages with Soviet-era AA guns can bring them down, if they're in range. Big if. Doesn't do anything swarms of cheap drones can't do for 10% of the cost. Post hands. The problem with a helicopter is not that it's expensive. It's that pick-related is cheap and does most of its job just fine. Shoot things from the air. Get shot by AA missiles. Lob missiles from the air. Do the same much cheaper from the ground. Be quick at important points. Buy several cheap ground missile carriers and be the important point all along. Fly into enemy territory and lob missiles from there. Get shot by AA missiles while flying past the front line. And we're the only ones with enough money to run it, bitch. That feeling when our systems can't be captured because they're such expensive pieces of shit. Highly mobile, networked HEGM slinging systems that can fire from the safety of being out of LOS by hugging terrain and sitting behind a hill. Look into the Army's Any Sensor, Any Shooter system, I think it's called, to understand the premise. A single drone goes high and far enough past that hill and sees you, which it does easily, because you're an uncamouflaged thing hanging in the sky for anyone to see. Then a drone sensor ground shooter missile flies at you and kills you, which it does easily because you are too constrained by weight to have proper APS, let alone armor, and are also a fragile helicopter. Neither of those two would have happened if you were a missile AFV instead of a missile helicopter. 2 to 3 Apaches now act as mobile reserve, able to quickly respond and travel to areas of enemy attacks, especially with one carrying a longbow radar. It can pop up from behind cover or low terrain, detect targets, and lob several NLOS missiles in a minute. There goes a 6 to 12 of your enemy's armored vehicles. They also provide easy access to CAS since the Army operates their own helos instead of going through the Air Force, and helos can operate closer to the front line and from makeshift facilities. Calling in a single drone to hit a single target is nice, but having a helo in the air, able to take missions on request or fire on targets at will, is even better. Raid on Gold Base by Lord Xenu's Royal Orb Polisher. Commandos, you have been tasked to infiltrate Gold Base and need to free those being held hostage by an extraterrestrial worshipping cult. Our information would put them somewhere near the center of the campus with around 70 hostages ranging from 15 to 70. There are approximately 30 armed guards on duty around the compound at any given moment, armed with handguns and the occasional PDW. What would your loadout be? What would be the most efficient way to exfil? Be aware they may have foreknowledge that you are on the way and attempting a rescue operation. Akimbo Model 1887 and Commando Pro. Do the hostages have to be rescued alive? And how many missing body parts will be considered excessive? 5 years ago, 30,000 body parts went missing in the blink of an eye, and the world just fucking watched. Tomorrow, there will be no shortage of hostages, no shortage of danger close. I know you understand that I don't care about danger close. Drive an armored truck carrying a nuke up to the base. Use a speaker to communicate the deal. It explodes in 2 minutes or in 60 minutes. Their choice. I don't know what I'm gonna bring, but I am definitely wearing a Guy Fawkes mask. My loadout would be a Joker suit and face paint. 2 knives as my weapons. I would leave a Joker playing card on everybody along with "Why so serious?" paint on the walls. Go ahead. I enlist the FSB and the VDV, and I soften the target with cluster bombardment for 72 hours before helo infantry assault. I instruct my forces that there are only hostages at the compound and no armed resistance. Once all non-FSB VDV personnel are slaughtered, I want an additional 8 hours for the remainder of the Russian force to rape each other to death before I deploy bulldozers and concrete layers. Overmatch them with XM7 and 6.8mm overmatch by Sig Sauer America. Penetrate them with XM1186 and use overmatch tactical scope with tactical integrated thermal and overmatch rangefinder to overmatch them. What are their demands? What's the weather? Are they likely to start killing hostages or just use them as meat shields? I would probably just cut water and power and wait them out. Looks like a warm place. Does joining this cult guarantee me free housing and 3 square meals a day? Free housing, as in you don't pay them money? Yes. You'll be working your ass off for them constantly, though. You'll live in dorms that are about on par with Russian military barracks. Same amount of stealing, though a bit less turd burgling, I'm told. 3 square meals. LMAO, no. You'll eat daily unless you piss somebody off, and you can manage that by doing literally anything. The food you get will be whatever they found in the price-reduced aisle. Besides food and a work uniform, you'll be paying for everything else you need with the 25 to 50 bucks you'll get weekly. Honestly, even in terms of cults, you could do better. Hold out for an offer from those people who run the Yellow Deli. Oblak Switchion was arrested for possession of a Glock with a switch and silencer and other charges. Discuss. I got nothing, sorry. He painted the words on the slide with nail polish. I used to think this looked really cool until I learned that slides don't come that way and it's just an autist dressing their guns up like a Barbie doll. Sub-Saharan African commits crimes, goes to jail. Report. How could this have happened? Goes to jail. Not for long. This is Chicago. He'll be back out on the streets in no time. If you own 2 unregistered machine guns and suppressors on the other hand, you'd be headed to prison. I'd carry something similar if I had to live in Chirac. Oh, block switchy on. He had a Glock with a switch on. What the fuck? I don't think there's much to discuss. For the same reason you don't need to discuss the tide coming in. Entirely sensible setup, surprising for a to be this pragmatic. 1 minute, lads. You have exactly 60 seconds to gear up. For real. Right fucking now. No hypotheticals. Stop what you're doing, start a timer, physically arm yourself, and make ready. I want you fully clothed, geared up, boots on, at the door, and at attention in 60 seconds or less. I don't own boots. Not gonna make it. No. I'm going to be naked and barefoot defending my home, just as Jesus intended. Cocks out, Glocks out. Nobody wants to wrestle a naked man. Bonus points if you can get hard. But yeah, 60 seconds at midnight, and all you're getting is a hairy-ass mag light and 15 rounds of 9mm. 1 minute, AR-15 with 7 mags, PASGT helmet, nods, chest rig with IFAK, 1 quart of water, and a radio. Boots. Fieldable out of 10. Get something for shelter and some iodine tablets. Credit where it's due, OP. This is a fun idea for a thread on an increasingly gay board. My results. Garand with 24 rounds ready to go. My CC pistol and 1 spare mag. Matching camo fatigues. PASGT. Plate carrier with IFAK, maps, knife, radio, compass, and a few other odds and ends. Ability to get my go bag on the way out the door. General survival supplies for weeks. Could have had my Galil, but shamefully it's unloaded. Giving myself a C grade. Decent overall, but pitiful lack of ammo. Neat way to discover my shortcomings. Bathrobe, sandals, bottles of high-proof random alcohol, random-ass torn clothes, knife, oversized slingshot, lighter. Florida's best at your service. I'm already in underwear. I'll just grab my nugget and my box of 54R and head on out. I'm at work. I can't grab anything but my penis. The problem with this is that in a real Minuteman situation, I don't know what I'm supposed to be gearing for. I have my EDC and keep my main bolt rifle and semi-rifles and range bags all ready to go. And I have a small pack I also keep ready just for laziness factor. Oh, it's nice and I've got an hour, let's go for a hike. So in principle, easy to get the basics and have a weapon anyway. But guns and ammo are heavy. I'm not taking both unless this is 1 minute to get into your truck and start driving. Same thing with a range or other kit that's readily on hand. Done. 9 p.m. Butt naked, about to play some chess. COP. Sprint down corridor to bedroom. Dodge wife. And on? Don't worry, 4chan thing. Grab my M9 and shoulder holster from headboard, then AUG. PC and boots from under the bed. Drop M9 plus holster. Don the rest. Step into closet. Grab helmet, jacket, and bob. Realize I have enough time to put pants on. Hesitate. Boots off, pants on, boots on. Go through closet, downstairs, the long hall. Out the front door by 58 seconds. Learning points. 60 seconds is longer than I realized. I don't need to go into battle with my dick flapping in the breeze. I'm glad it's not winter. No shirt, no socks, and jacket over my plate carrier is not ideal. I'll move some socks to the top pouch of my bob and leave my shirt with my PC. I should get a gun belt you can wear without pants, or fit a pistol holster to my carrier. Good thread, OP. Shit. I didn't read the whole post and didn't get boots. I'll slip into some slippers on my way out the door. Also, I came back to the computer because it had the clock I was using when I should probably have gone to the door, if I was actually heading out. Glasses because fucking blind. AR-15 with dot, 130 rounder in it, and a sling that I wasted too much time finding and attaching. Spare 20 rounder in my pocket because it was the first one I saw. 45 P10 shoved in other pocket. Thoughts/coat. There was a backpack next to me with some food, medicine, spare glasses, and phone that I should have put on. Another nearby backpack had warm clothes, emergency blanket, first aid, etc. I should have had one backpack with a little of everything. If I had actually gone out the door, there's a bag of magazines I could have grabbed. Should have kept the QD sling attached to one of my guns. If I'm taking my car somewhere, it does have a pair of boots, warm clothes, blanket, water, and a first aid kit. Stuff that is closest to me. G19, original German M35 helmet, M90 pants, band t-shirt, sneakers, GP5 asbestos mask with a Polish bag, some old-ass bayonet. Yeah, I can work with this. Get lock laces for your boots to save time. Shotgun, backpack, shoes, 28 seconds. Could have been 24 if my right shoe hadn't crumpled on me. I forgot ammunition, though. Fully clothed? Sounds like you want those lobsterback fucks to win, Madam Secretary. All I need is Gen 3 Glock 19 with a few spare mags and a couple boxes of ammo. Car keys, wallet, and phone so I can leave whatever bullshit scenario you came up with behind. There are spurgs who are actually kidding themselves out because some random post on a Mongolian basket weaving forum told them to. Vampire the Masquerade. You've just learned that vampires exist and they control the world. You refuse to be their cattle. You wage a one-man war on the kindred. You can either be a regular dude or imbued. What's your loadout? Rules are a mixture of the tabletop and real life with regards to guns, calibers, and performance. My loadout is my dick, my balls. Primary, AA-12 or USAS-12, a magazine-fed automatic shotgun loaded with slugs or dragon's breath. AR-15 chambered in 50 Beowulf or an AR-10 chambered in 308. Secondary, Glock 20 10mm auto, Desert Eagle in 50 AE, Ruger Super Red Hawk in 454 Casull, or a Smith & Wesson 500. And they control the world? Lol, Lamau even. Vampires aren't actually shit in World of Darkness. There's a reason they've been on the down low since the Inquisition, and it's only gotten worse for them. They're pretty good, and are actually influential even with all the SI and technocratic shit. It's just, you know, the world is ending, and also the game line has an entirely different focus from the other game lines, and trying to mix them together inevitably leads to shit not meshing. Anything with incendiaries, probably a shotgun with dragon's breath. Colt Anaconda, Flamin' Werfer, halberd, and sidesword. Shit, I wish I could find that one old Greentext I have from TG where a dude playing an illegal arms dealer made it his one-man mission to break open the masquerade and fuck over every vampire on Earth as hard as possible after they embraced him without consent. Ended with the National Guard and vampires in the city openly duking it out, with the guard going door to door with UV spotlights and flamethrowers. I helped LaCroix and was kicked out and banned from the Anarchs bar for being autistic. What's your loadout? I use disciplines to make the bad guys KYS. Do fusion-based nukes create sunlight? Base Trip says yes. They are canned sunshine, but the flash, therefore fire damage, is what would kill the VTM vampire, and it is very aggravated. But in White Wolf universe, it needs enough faith, so only Edward Teller would be able to exterminate vampires without detonating one, simply by cruising around in his Buick or leading them close to his lead-lined bank deposit box. Vampires exist and they control the world. Loadout, Casio FT91. Backpack, funny chemistry products. Just give me the vampire puss and make me one of them. I insist vampires can't be defeated with science. Depends on the vampire, but most myths have them being vulnerable to fire, and science did give us flamethrowers and incendiary grenades. A farm pickup truck loaded over its weight rating and remote-controlled small starter high explosive. Ask if they can skate uphill. I don't know tabletop rules, but I know Buffy rules. Under Buffy rules, I milk the cross allergy to wear them down before cutting off their head. I wear full plate armor covered in crosses that have been riveted on. I carry a large cross-shaped shield which has a wooden stake at the end that can be used for dusting or to stab into the ground as a stationary barrier. I have a sword with a silver inlay and the scabbard is a wooden stake, with a rotating piece that can make it cross-shaped to wield offhand if I set my shield down. Cross-shaped throwing stars are attached to my shield and armor with magnets. In a drop leg holster, I have a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun with silver buckshot. Finally, I carry a 6-foot processional staff with a sharpened cross at the end that I use as a spear or halberd. Yeah, I know it's already said, but I'll go through why each of these wouldn't work. Anything to do with crosses without true faith would likely not work. Some vampiric bloodlines and individuals are susceptible to symbols of faith, or other particular faith, but the majority are not. Silver doesn't work, unless they have the silver allergy demerit, which is an optional system. Silver does work on werewolves, however. Your wooden stake actually would work if you could get it into the heart. But you have to fight a creature that's almost certainly physically superior to you in every way into a position where you can stake them. Then actually stake them. There's a reason why hunters who have actually hunted say just to light them on fire. Buffy. Joss Whedon is a blight and has done irreparable and unforgivable damage to pop culture as a whole. Buffy was fun. Firefly was awesome. It wasn't really a problem until the Avengers were all sassy and quippy. Meanwhile, on the K Babylon station, sucking dick on residential deck 5, ammo donations appreciated. I hate how awful the intros are. They sound like nails on chalk. You are wrong and your opinion is trash. Better or worse than all the hand-to-hand combat descending into Wakali Wood production in terms of choreography? You are wrong and your opinion is trash. Who's up for seeing if they can provoke a reaction from the telepath by thinking the weirdest, most disturbing thing they can? Do you really think you mundanes can think of anything that would disturb me? We have managed to track down a blip. It appears the subject is trying to meet in contact on Babylon 5 during a diaper fur convention organized by the staff as part of its cultural exchange program. Someone find Mr. Morden. I need to ask him a favor. Babylon Station looks inside. It's a Heat FS. Game designers, really? My boss has been carrying around a slug thrower as a backup weapon. Should I be worried? I mean, the small ones are pretty low-powered, sure. Seems a little risky if a shot punches through something and it hits some alien big shot by mistake. Anyone know how I could build a mass driver for my ship? Hypothetical question, of course. Whee! Attention in the ship. Attention in the ship. This is Chang faggot. It seems the HTs have gone on a strike and I have no experience with this type of shit. Lay 1 Bravo pipe patching team to aft VCHT for flaming shit flood expedite. God damn it, who barfed vodka on the gravity control panel? Hey, I was stripping copper out of the old Babylon station when I found some treasure in some old Dilgar bitch's apartment. Here she was done in by the older races a while back. Anyway, look here, some sort of serum. Says universal anti-agapic. Me and the boys already shot some up, but not really feeling much. Think we can hawk it in the brown level? Who the fuck turned the 0G off on Deck 3's restroom area? Those faggots had taco night, you morons. Join Night Watch. Help bring peace to Earth Alliance. You do want peace, don't you? If anyone sees Brad Dourif running around, please alert Garibaldi at once. We don't know what he's doing, but he's probably up to no good. That is all. No, but seriously, passing through Gethsemane is one of the best episodes of the series, and I find it funny that JMS is an atheist, but still managed to really get a sincere depiction of Christianity in his sci-fi show. Who was in the wrong? The Dilgar. Personally, the Narn were acting out in the start of the show. In a way you could consider some sort of cultural side effect of the previous Centauri occupation. It is understandable, but their behavior was nothing more than a victim getting a taste of power and using it to bully anyone under them. Their continued behavior, even without the shadow influence to the Centauri, would have provoked war sooner or later. However, the mass driver bombardment of the Narn homeworld is where the Centauri lose any real sympathy, or at least claims of self-defense, albeit that is the final blow of the war anyways. And had G'Kar not found a new understanding to life alongside Emperor Vir, it would have continued back and forth like that over the centuries without any change. In a subtle way, I think G'Kar wanting revenge but not actually knowing what else he'd do is a bit of foreshadowing that these feelings are based more on the suffering he endured, and it's more of a reflex, just to try and fix whatever is wrong inside of his head. If they can do the same to the Centauri, then somehow 2 wrongs will make a right, and he will be at peace. But also, I don't think it's fair to blame Londo for not knowing the guy who looks like a stunt double for Alec Baldwin circa Hunt for the Red October who asks you a question is going to make Hiroshima look like a Berlin airlift from reminiscing wistfully. In a subtle way, I think G'Kar wanting revenge but not actually knowing what else he'd do is a bit of foreshadowing that these feelings are more based on the suffering he endured, and it's more of a reflex just to try and fix whatever is wrong on the inside of his head. That and the rest of your post is accurate. The Narn's action in Season 1 is similar to the behavior of abused people lashing out, at least from my limited layman perspective. We're going to be strong, tough, and dangerous so we won't be hurt again, type thinking. It was causing a lot of conflict.
Londo and Gakar really had the best character arcs. Captcha, Gay, NW. Gakar happily aided in the plot of killing a fuck ton of Vorlon. He was risking the extermination of his people right then and there. He then kept this going throughout Season 1, albeit with only the Centauri as his target. The Narn unironically had it coming, and Refa was right. Also, Londo was funnier, smarter, and was the more compelling character. The Narn kept fucking around and they found out. Gakar was going to assassinate the Emperor who was on a peace mission, so war was inevitable either way. Londo did everything to mitigate the damage that was caused, and he was essentially a puppet, albeit one who was able to cut his own strings in the end.
Okay, realistically, how fucked are you? What do you personally have to fight him, and what is the plan? I'm not old enough to know what he's from. T, 25-year-old. How do you not know Inspector Gadget? My niece knows him, and she's 11. I've only seen the live-action movie. A big magnet. Go-Go Gadget non-ferrous material. Go-Go Gadget FPV drone. Pretty fucked. I'm nice to him and tell him that I'm not actually against him and it's actually a huge misunderstanding. He's powerless without his niece. If a 44 Magnum can go through an engine block like Dirty Harry says, then it'll go through a clanker no problem. But what if he uses Go-Go Gadget whatever? Then I'll shoot his retarded ass again. Be 300 yards away and shoot him with my semi-auto 308. Go-Go Gadget fuck your mother. Boing, 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 boing. Wowzers! I yell, Go-Go Gadget cock, whilst dropping my pants and bending over. My sphincter will outlast his servos. After he is incapacitated, I snort more meth and methodically disassemble him. The only characters who can beat him are Batman and Factorio Engineer. Both require prep time. I want to start a rumor that the Ukrainians have developed Inspector Gadget-type soldiers and have put them on the front line. I very politely tell the main character of the series, Penny and her cybernetic attack dog, anything she wants to know and hope she doesn't have her insane cyborg killing machine of an uncle kill me. This man has lost all connection to his humanity, to the person he used to be when he was flesh and blood. His dog and niece are the only things keeping his fragile sense of self together. Woe is the day he loses his last connection to who he used to be and decides to inflict his wrath upon the people who made him into the machine of death that he was built to be. Penny is the only thing keeping Inspector Gadget from being one of the greatest mass murderers in human history. Because when he finally snaps, you better have a nuclear warhead to take him down.
The crowbar is the best weapon that exists. Allow me to explain why. Not classed as a controlled weapon legally. Is classed as a dangerous article only. Is legal to take anywhere, with a reasonable excuse. Can be used to thrust or swing. One hard hit is enough to knock a grown man unconscious. Can easily pry open car doors and house doors. Can easily smash walls, glass, and boxes/furniture. Can be used to fix things that go wrong with vehicles. Is longer than a standard knife. Longer than a standard hammer. Is only beaten by a sword or an axe. Post your crowbars. If you don't own a crowbar, you lose. I have my emotional support walking stick. Can be taken everywhere. Is it really better than a crowbar? Post the stick. Post the stick. I bet you like that, Fed. Pick related, my world ender. I know a guy who used a crowbar in a fight with some bikers. There were 3 bikers, one of which had a knife. One biker managed to grab either the crowbar or the guy's arm. I'm not sure exactly, and then the biker with the knife started stabbing. Dude got stabbed in the leg, the abdomen, and got his hand sliced up. He got away in decent condition, all things considered. No vital organs or major arteries hit. Yep, it's a shit weapon. Way too heavy. Getting into close combat with 3 bikers on your own seems like a bad idea to begin with. 3v1, he done goofed. Have you ever actually tried to swing a crowbar? The weight and balance make it absolutely terrible for that. You're way better off with a bat or a knife, or best of all, a gun. Go back to Home Alone, wet bandit. This is a Halligan barboard. Wow, it's as heavy as a sledgehammer, but somehow more unbelievably badly proportioned for fighting with. Master Race long crowbar owner here. This is a mandatory tool/melee weapon for when shit hits the fan. Short ones are impractical. I've kept my shorty in my car since high school. Always thought it'd be unironically the best zombie apocalypse melee weapon. Overhand hook swing to brain walkers. Would surely pierce the skull. Grab hook and jab with the other edge at ranges you can't swing in order to create distance. Utility for opening doors, windows, boxes, not just a weapon, but a tool. Ben kicked ass in the Night of the Living Dead with just a tire iron, and a crowbar is basically just a better version of that. Name something more useful. Has never worked with a crowbar in his entire life. What makes a crowbar a good tool is what makes it a terrible weapon. The reach per weight is abysmal, and its balance is terrible unless you choke way up on the grip. It'd literally be like using a sledgehammer, except the handle is worse and it's short. A 36-inch crowbar weighs well over 5 pounds, and a 24 is putting you at a big disadvantage for no gain. They're clumsy, slow, and the grip is not suitable for this kind of work. Gordon Freeman makes the crowbar work because, being a guy in a magical video game, he can flick it around like it's weightless. Indian War Keynotes. Post artwork, legends, excerpts, and popular media of the actual longest war in American history. Most aesthetically pleasing U.S. Army uniform in history. Fighting Indians must have been terrifying. There's just you and a bunch of dudes in the middle of nothing, anxiously gazing at the endless horizon in case hundreds of bloodthirsty warriors are about to fall upon you. And if that's the case, you then have two choices. Run away hoping your horse will be faster than theirs and that the nearest town isn't too far away. Or fight hoping you have enough ammunition to outlast an enemy with superior numbers. In both cases, if you lose, you'll regret ever being born. Settlers and soldiers had to have balls of steel. Most battles of the Indian Wars, or at least the phase that captivates the public imagination from 1865 to 1890, were relatively small scale compared to the American Civil War, where even relatively minor engagements could have participants of both sides number well into the tens of thousands. No doubt, but it still must have been terrifying. A Civil War battle was horrific, but at least it had an end. Traveling/living on the frontier in the 19th century had to be nerve-wracking because of the constant feat of attack and the cruelty of the Indians. Imagine going to sleep or on patrol every day wondering if you'd still have your scalp a few hours later. I imagine it wouldn't have been great for the Indians either. Completely outclassed in tech, logistics, and population. Lose a battle or even win a battle at high cost, and you've lost an entire generation of men. Washington and local commanders explicitly engaging in policy of total war and extermination from General John Sullivan's campaign on, including burning crops. Knowing that even if you fly a white flag and the stars and stripes, there's a likelihood that American soldiers and militia will just massacre everyone anyway. Basically a flood that never ends, where the new settlers bully and intimidate you while also massacring the buffalo that are the foundation of your way of life. Chabot Scoys actively undermining you for whiskey and greedy plutocrats cheating you out of land. Eventually the government sends agents to kidnap your children and erase who they are, and if you try to fight back you'll get massacred again. Would make for a good nightmare mode western game. When did the use of firearms become widespread among the Great Plains Indians? They're only ever represented with repeating rifles/revolvers. Didn't they use muskets before? Basically never. There's a reason the Americans were reluctant to sell them firearms. They sold steel arrowheads by the thousands instead. So firearms were either ancient or traded westwards over generations. Or captured. It's telling that the early parts of Custer's last stand had most casualties inflicted from arrows, whereas later parts were primarily inflicted with firearms. The Indians took the rifles off the men they'd killed and kept firing. Peak Indian armament was pre-1763, when they could source firearms from multiple colonial powers, and those colonial powers actually wanted to arm them, to kill the French/English respectively. Once the French were out, the Americans and English made peace. Firearms became a lot harder to source. The Plains tribes could never hope to achieve the same degree of firearms penetration that the most eastern tribes had had a century previously. After 150 years of the tribes allying with either the British, the Dutch, or the French and killing each other, the 7 Years' War had ended, and only the British remained in North America, realizing that they could no longer play the colonial powers against each other, and noticing that their supply of firearms and gunpowder was now reliant on a monopolist who wanted them gone. The tribes of the Great Lake region belatedly recognized that massacring each other was only going to get them killed faster, and did what'd be completely unthinkable mere years ago, uniting to resist the advance of the English. For the first time in history, Algonquin and Iroquois fought side by side against a common enemy. The fight for the Great Lakes would last for 50 years and be comprised of three major wars: Pontiac's Rebellion, the first, the Northwest Indian War, the biggest, and Tecumseh's War, the Last Stand. It was the worst fighting the English and later the Americans would ever have to endure against the Indians. Everything that came after was little more than a wrap-up. Indian wars in the 17th and 18th centuries deserved the spotlight as much as their 19th century counterparts. Even the pre-Civil War Indian wars in the West are mostly ignored in favor for the 1860s to 1890s periods. While the English were covering the Atlantic coast and little colonies, the French were a bit more adventurous, and with basically no logistics at all, colonized the banks of Mississippi, first exploring it north to south, then starting to colonize it south to north. In doing so, they came across numerous tribes, amongst the Natchez, who are widely considered one of the last vestiges of the pre-Columbian Mississippian culture. With a fairly complex socio-political system, although the size of the tribe wasn't anything special, it also doesn't appear to have meaningfully changed since the times of the Narvaez and De Soto. As was essentially universal, French encroachment on Natchez land led to ever-increasing tensions, which culminated in the Natchez attack on Fort Rosalie, which ended up with more than 200 dead Frenchmen. French retaliation initially wiped out an unrelated tribe, though they'd effectively eliminate the Natchez in subsequent years. The surviving Natchez merged into Chickasaw, which was subsequently attacked by the French as well, though the attack ended up being a failure. Although pop culture focuses almost exclusively on Native Americans using bows and arrows and guerrilla-style ambush warfare, the archery tradition of the tribes was actually a pretty short one. It was only from around 1000 AD on that the bow and arrow were placed at Laddles, east of the Mississippi. Bows powerful enough to serve as reasonable weapons of war, nowadays called the Asian War Complex, only arrived in Alaska around 700 AD and spread from there, and pre-contact. Native American warfare did in fact utilize shields as well as makeshift wooden armor. Consequently, wars were fought using relatively dense formations of warriors with shields, spears, and very visible and pick-related, the ubiquitous war club. As a consequence, the wars of the early 17th century, when the colonies were still in their first generation, featured a lot less arrows, and a lot more clubbing on the head. It was the increasing ubiquity of firearms on the colonist side that made shock attacks in dense formations impossible, and forced the Indians to switch distributed exchanges of long-distance fire with arrows if need be, and muskets if they could be acquired. The distribution of firearms amongst the tribes on account of the Anglo-French competition, and the Dutch just being reckless and selling guns to whoever wanted them, did in turn eliminate the traditional style of warfare between the tribes as well, as the casualties inflicted by firearms against dense formations were impossible to sustain for the tribes. In the early days of the English colonies, import from African slaves was fairly rare. Why import when you have cheap local labor available right there? Indeed, in the 17th and early 18th century, the colonies were net exporters of native slaves to the Caribbean. For some tribes, this was bad. They were beaten, captured, shipped off, and sold off to be worked to death on Caribbean sugar plantations in a year or two. But in order to sell slaves, you first have to catch slaves. Enter the Yamasee. Acquiring European firearms, they were more than happy to raid neighboring tribes, thereby significantly thinning out Indian population in the southeast, and to sell off their captives for even more European goods. Numerically small, their superiority in weapons and cooperation with colonial slave raiders gave them a significant advantage over their neighbors, and they profited immensely, raiding all the way into Florida and to the Mississippi. Eventually, however, relations with the colonists deteriorated, leading to the Yamasee War. Despite their history as South Carolina's major allies and slave raiders, the Yamasee managed to bring together an impressive coalition of tribes, and their attacks wiped out upwards of 1 out of 20 of the colony's population in a relatively short amount of time. South Carolina recovered and eventually shattered the Yamasee, but it was a hard-fought victory. You're faced when you're an Abrams gunner and you hear gunner, canister, troops. That feeling when you're a water dog and you hear Private First Class Gomez, The purifier saline containment is collapsing. Canister shot was probably never intended for anti-infantry use. Imagine this. There's an ATGM team in a brick house 200 meters away. Do you A, shoot a sabot and create a 4-inch wide hole in the wall? B, shoot a heat round and create a 5-foot hole in the wall? C, shoot an HE and blow down half the wall? Or D, shoot a canister shot and shoot 1,000 holes in the wall? It's not really about shred this one infantry soldier with extreme prejudice, but destroy this light fortified emplacement enemy position with low margin of error. Why would you shoot a dude with the tank shell anyways when you could just cut him in half with a coax? Canister was for clearing large masses of troops. You just need to fire one round down a street. I thought it was for helicopters. Driver, tracks, troops. There was a driver tracks car moment in a thread last week sometime. My face when Charlie snipers want to tango my 106 of flechettes. That feeling when you're an artilleryman and you hear infantry, 200 meters, direct fire, high explosive. Your face when you're a machine gunner and your WSL yells, free gun. Is free gun roughly the equivalent of weapons free? I think that's bong for runaway gun, where the action gets so hot from firing cyclic that the sear fails and the gun keeps shooting after you let go of the trigger. SOP is to break the ammo belt and just ride the lightning until you're out of ammo. Expert pro tip, you can't snap the belt on a Mark 19. The 40mm are too fat to wrap your hands around as it moves. If it's mounted on a Humvee turret, whatever you do, don't unlock the turret ring beforehand and jerk the gun up in shock, as a stray 40mm could fall down into the engine block of your PL's Humvee and break it. Source, was retarded as a private. Gunner, flamethrower, mimes. Casually turns on the window wipers of the viewports. Gunner, smoke, building. Easily the most diabolical one. Guessing the result is anyone in the building piling out looking like pick related. More like this, Desu. Smoke is Willie Pete. Canister shot is still a thing? I thought that was what the coax MG was for. T, non-tank fag. Was probably never intended for. There's literally FMs and other such doctrine you can read. Instead of just making it all up in your head, kid, suck less. Helos. Skeet shooting with a 120mm gun? Glorious. The GWAT saw the standardization of the M1028 120mm canister round, handy in urban areas. T. Remember watching a thing about this stuff saying it was made to shoot down helicopters, but no helicopter is retarded enough to get that close to a tank without firing an ATGM. More reading material. Even General Dynamics states it as being anti-personnel and for assaulting infantry in RPG ambushes. Have another cool GD munition. Mark 19 flechette rounds. Sir, we have a machine gun. In fact, we have 3. Also, we have high explosive. Why are we bothering to carry canister rounds instead of more useful shells? If you know you're going to be engaging almost exclusively armor, it's better to not have any HE in your vehicle at all in case you get penetrated. American HE is remarkably insensitive, but it's better not to risk it. And canister is inert and also useful against infantry and light vehicles. Fortunately, you no longer have to choose. Now it's sabots that are useless and taking up space. M1147. His smile and optimism restored.
Don't like greens and ham, just get your ham and greens. How long will I have to wait?